Prozac smoking, some put blow up their nose to cope with the lows. The wind is cold and it blows. In they socks and they soles.
The Alvin Ailey American Dance Troupe.
Next on Black Nouveau.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of Black Nouveau. I'm Milton Dockery.
And I'm Faithe. We're glad you could join us. This week, we'll talk with educator Dr. Dorothy Travis-Moore and profile the first African-American to play in the National Basketball Association.
We'll also chat with author and psychologist Dr. Earl Bracy and have the results of our To Kill a Mockingbird contest.
But first, Alvin Ailey was a dancer and choreographer who is credited with making popular modern dance and increasing African-American participation in dance concerts. Founded in 1958, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater has been thrilling audiences for more than 50 years. Liddy Collins visited members of Ailey II when the troupe was in town to perform at the Sharon Lynn Wilson Center for the Arts.
Our Rock of Gibraltar, our Stonehenge, our Taj Mahal, our monument, our testimonial to freedom, to peace, and to love down on the corner.
These 12 dancers make up Ailey II, the junior company of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. Ailey fuses ballet, modern, African, hip-hop, and any dance genre you can think of. Their 12-week tour brought them to the Milwaukee area and to UW Milwaukee, where Ailey II members taught a master class. Wisconsin native Fauna Tesfagirgas led the class.
You don't need as much force as you think you need. Put too much force, your leg is going to turn out. So you want to just keep your knee facing the bottom.
This is Fauna's second year with Ailey II. The hard work it takes to become a dancer got her there.
You have to love to perfect things because every day is different with dance. It's not like a piano. You know A is going to sound like A, G is going to sound like G every day. Whereas with dance, today my turnout could be here, tomorrow it could be there. You know, today I might be flexible, tomorrow I might be, maybe I'm cold or something happened yesterday in the performance that makes me not as flexible today. So every day is a different sort of preparation. You take class differently every day. You just have to be in tune with your body each day, each moment, and perfect things as much as possible in any given moment. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5.
And Fauna seems to have always been in tune with her body and dance.
My family tells me that I was dancing around the house since I could walk. And also I come from a family of artists in general. My mom always had us doing some sort of arts and crafts or in separate rooms practicing different things.
5, 7, 8.
Her dancing started in her hometown of Madison, Wisconsin.
I began in Madison at Ballet Madison with Charmaine Risto. And after years of training in ballet with her, I went on to attend Interlochen Arts Academy. It's in northern Michigan. It's a boarding arts high school. And that's where I was more introduced to modern dance too. And from there I went on to the Ailey School and Fordham University to get my BFA in dance.
What does it take to be an Alvin Ailey dancer?
I'm still discovering that for myself, what it takes to be a dancer in general, but particularly an Ailey dancer. I feel like they're so versatile. They're strong, they can do anything, any style, any choreographer, anything that comes in the room, they're prepared to master that. It takes a level of, I guess, transparency when you perform to really express something intimate with the audience. Sometimes when I dance, I think of things that I can't even put into words, or scenarios that, maybe things that have happened, or people that I know that I love that are lost, that I can't really talk about, I can dance about. And I think that is what I admire when I see a dancer perform, is that transparency.
She touched on a lot of topics during the class, but emphasized showing yourself through the movements.
Because that's the most fulfilling to me as a dancer when I dance. Yes, it feels good to get the steps right, to get the counts right, but when you leave a class thinking like, I just gave so much of me, you know, that's the best feeling to me. And so I encourage other dancers to do that too, because, I mean, you're spending all this time working on this, you know, craft, and it has to be fulfilling to you in some way.
Fauna Tesfagergas is excited about being a member of the Ailey II Dance Company and getting to see the world while touring. Austria was the first stop on her first tour.
It's something I wake up in the morning, I think about, and I go to sleep and I think about. And I feel like it's a gift that I've been given from God, and I have to hone that gift and do as much as I can with it, and touch as many lives as I can with it.
Our first guest this week is a veteran educator who has a national reputation for her work with at-risk students as both teacher and administrator. Joining us is Dr. Dorothy Travis-Moore. Dr. Travis-Moore, welcome to Black Nouveau, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Travis-Moore, what motivated you in 1996 to found the Ceria M. Travis Academy?
I was motivated by my mother, because growing up in the central city of Milwaukee, she would do work, day work, and come home and look at the children on the playground. And if some were missing, like going to juvenile detention, she would say, "My, we need to help that child." And growing up at Mount Moriah Church, I would always get tired of her going, "Oh, she wants somebody to help this boy and that boy." But she said to us that it is the men that will be the leaders in our families. And so she passed away in 1986. And what did I do 10 years later? I opened a school, named it after her, and our first years were all boys.
Let's make sure we make this distinction. You did it with your own funds.
Yes, I did it with my own funds. I left Milwaukee Public Schools, and I took out my little retirement plan, and then I worked 3 different jobs. But most of all, in my heart, I knew it was something that I had to do. And I talked to my pastor and elders, and he said, "Look, this is something you've been talking about for a few years. So if God is God, just do it." And I stepped out on faith.
I hear a theme: commitment. When you started your school, many people felt that choice schools would be a viable alternative to public schools. Did they become a viable alternative?
I certainly think so, because when I started my school, I had many colleagues still in Milwaukee Public Schools, and they would give me a call and saying, because you're not looking for the cream of the crop. I'm looking to make their jobs, their work easier, because I love public schools. I grew up in a public school. My children went to public school, but I know that we cannot be all things to all children. And so here was a population that I truly can say that when some of those boys came to school, teachers couldn't teach and the other children couldn't learn. But they were my heart. And I knew that there was something meaningful that could happen to their lives if someone just took the time, carve out a little place, and work with them.
Here's what's impressive about your curriculum. Holistic approach.
Yes.
Not only a holistic approach, but you motivate students to get involved. In essence, I see ownership here. Talk about that for me.
Well, when students came to our school, they knew then that they had to find their place, I call it on the wall, okay? We'd get them involved. Some of them were on student councils for the first time. Some of them we had the Mighty Males group. We had Human Relations group. And in fact, I was accustomed to putting a child in a club, even if they were the only one, okay? So we did teach them that they need to take ownership of their school.
Now, how have choice schools affected the educational environment here in Milwaukee?
Well, I like to think that together we are trying to impact the city of Milwaukee. We've got some issues here. All you need to do is drive around the city and see the number of children, particularly teenagers, who are not in anybody's school. And my thoughts are that they will affect us later on if we don't collectively and individually decide what school program is appropriate for them. And that's how I think that choice for me, because what I did was take the students that were in difficulty in school, at risk, as some people may call them, and work with them. That's going to allow all the other students and all the other schools to do what they do best.
Now tell me, what kind of changes have you seen in those young people that you serve?
You know what, there are so many stories that I could tell about the young people, but one in particular, a young man that who really came to us from 6th grade, came with me when I left Lincoln Middle School of the Arts.
Followed you around?
Followed me around. In fact, when I left Lincoln Middle School of the Arts, the principal said to me, "We don't want you to go." But I said, "It's my heart's desire and I want to impact students, so I'm going." And he said, "Take this one, take this one, take this one, and take this one with you." And I did. And one of those young men came through our middle school program, left and tried to go to a high school. That high school called me and said, "He's not making it as a 9th grader. Why don't you start a high school?" And we did. This young man graduated with honors, went on into the Army. And here's what I mean by that. He called me one night. I was at African World Festival. It's 11 o'clock. We're leaving the grounds. And he said, I just wanted to talk to you tonight. And I said, "Why?" He says, "I am in New Jersey." I said, "What are you doing in New Jersey?" He said, "You know, I'm in the Army and I'm getting ready to go to Iraq." And I said, "Iraq?" He said, "Yes." He said, "But I call you because just in case I don't make it back, I want you to know that my life would never be as it is had it not been for you. And I wanted to share that with you."
So you shared in return what you observed from your mother. You've also fostered over 11 foster children, opened your home to international students. I got about 1 minute, briefly. Talk about that.
Well, we love sharing with children. And when they come to us and foster care came and said, "We have a child and we have the room, the space," I said, "Okay, let's do this." And then one, and then another. And then, of course, somehow the international program called me. And then we brought children from South America, London, Africa. Yes.
Dr. Travis-Moore, have about 30 more seconds. You're an ordained minister. Is your social consciousness a part of your ministry, briefly?
It most certainly is, because we can't serve God unless we serve others. That's it in a nutshell.
Dr. Travis-Moore, thank you for joining us, ma'am.
You're welcome.
6 seconds to go, puts it up and good at the buzzer. Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant has hit a shot at the buzzer.
Today, an overwhelming number of players in the National Basketball Association are African American, but 60 years ago, the NBA had no black players. That changed in 1950 when a number of players were drafted. Earl Lloyd was the first to actually play in an NBA game for the Washington Capitals.
And then you realize, man, the common denominator is about to happen. And the great common denominator is when you scrimmage and they throw the ball up, we are all equal.
Lloyd was born in Alexandria, Virginia in 1928. He played college ball at West Virginia State and was drafted in the 9th round by the Capitals. He played in over 650 games in 9 seasons with the Capitals, Syracuse Nationals, and Detroit Pistons. Today, the 80-year-old Hall of Famer spends much of his time traveling and talking to young people about his experiences. On February 2nd, he spoke to a packed house at Marquette High School.
First of all, I get asked, who influenced you the most in your whole lifetime? I had 2 coaches, my high school coach and my college coach. Big influence. But if you sit with me for 10 minutes and talk with me, you will know who influenced me the most. My mother, all 5'5" of her. My father, nice man, hard-working guy, and he kind of led by example, work ethic and all that. But my mother, tough cookie. My first game as a Washington Capital, I understand now this is 1950, and the N-word was alive and very, very well. My first game, now you know how they introduce the visiting team first, then the home team, and they introduced the starters last. So I happened to be in the last group, and as I ran on the floor, there were two white guys sitting right behind my mother and father, and one of them said to the other one, "Do you think this end can play in the ball?" Now my mother, who's an expert in conflict resolution, she turned around and looked this dude dead in his eyes and said, "Trust me, the boy can play." At the end of the game, they were bosom buddies. In my lifetime, at that particular time, the playing field was not level. But my first pro training camp was the first time in my life I experienced a level playing field. The first scrimmage, they threw the ball up. Because the ball don't know what kind of hands it's in. And I said to myself, now you've been told all your life and treated all your life inferiorly. If you have a statement to make, now's the time to make it. I made some statements, and I had to apologize to some of my teammates. And I explained to them, look, man, don't take this personal. I said, for all the trials and tribulations I experienced, somebody's got to pay. And you are unfortunate, man, because you are convenient to me every day.
He was asked about the toughest opponents he faced.
Bill Russell was never a welcoming sight. We had a player watcher. We had a guy, when we went to Boston, we had one guy watching the Celtics run on the floor, hoping he was hurt. So I have to say Bill Russell. But the toughest guy that I had to guard one-on-one was Elgin Baylor.
Although he had to overcome racial barriers, Lloyd says he doesn't consider himself a pioneer like Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson was an island, man. He's out there all by himself, man. His own teammates didn't want to play with him. In fact, if you can remember back, Dixie Walker was hitting .343 for the Dodgers, the leading hitter in the National League. He said, I'm not going to play with him. So Branch Ricketts said, you're right, because you're going to Pittsburgh. But it's, you know, and fans vilified him, man, and the opponents try to hurt him. And here's a guy that obviously has fire in his belly, but he's told he can't fight back. See, nobody told me, man. I mean, if some guy try to hurt me, you know, if it's a choice of him hurting me or me hurting him, he's got to go. But he was one of my idols, man.
He knows the game has changed and has mixed emotions about today's players.
Most of the guys who reach this level, they've probably been spoiled right from middle school. So, but I tell you what, they got some real talented people, man. And I mean, they're big people, man, they're agile, and it's a pleasure to watch. I mean, some guys get a little uptight about their fundamentals and all that. I said, man, you can say what you want to say, man. You look at a kid like Tracy McGrady, who's 6'9", and not just him. I mean, LeBron James, because LeBron is a phenom. But they got some people out there, man, can truly play. Kobe Bryant can play. And it's a bunch of them. Michael Redd can play. So it's... Only thing I ask guys, I said, man, look, you know, just every watch, when that group leaves, make sure you leave it a better place for the folks coming behind you.
Although Black Nouveau and MPTV celebrate African American history throughout the year, there are some special programs airing this month that we thought would interest you. The following programs will air within the next week on MPTV, and you can get a full schedule from the Black Nouveau page on the MPTV website.
It took a while to have something called black art. You know, there were so few black artists that you didn't think that way.
We set up protests against the Met. And people driving along on buses seeing this group of 95% black people and white artists with us out marching.
Equality. It's a shame we had to fight for it because we are equal.
Folks, here's a story about Minnie the Moocher.
American Masters presents the band leader who wrote the book on cool. Cab Calloway had the music and the moves and the lingo that led the way.
Hip-hop is Cab Calloway.
Look for Cab Calloway. Sketches on American Masters.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around.
This photo is one of the iconic images from Milwaukee's civil rights history. Standing to the right of Father James Groppe holding the flag is our guest, Dr. Earl Bracy. Welcome to Black Nouveau, Dr. Bracy.
Thank you, Faith. It's my pleasure to be here.
In your autobiography, The Making of a Psychologist, you talk about your participation in Milwaukee's fight for open housing. But your civil rights activism and involvement really started back in Fairhope, Alabama. Talk a little bit about Fairhope.
Yeah, that's very true. Fairhope is, it's actually a tourist town that sits right on the Mobile Bay, coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Lots of farmland, and in Fairhope, when I was growing up, everything was segregated. If you went to the grocery store, you could kind of stand in the same line with white people, but if you went to, like I would see men standing in, if they went to what they call the liquor store to buy alcohol, they had two separate lines, one for whites and one for blacks. The schools were segregated. We had one high school in our town, Fairhope, but we had to kind of bypass that high school to go to a different high school, which was an all-black high school in the next town over, which was Daphne, Alabama. And actually, there is a lot of history in Fairhope. When we talk about the Civil War and what happened with the slaves, there were a lot of battles in and around Fairhope itself. And you know, my father was a minister, a laborer, and we used to help him do a lot of different jobs. And in doing this, we would always come across these graves, and they'd be kind of earmarked 18-something, I can't remember the exact dates, but sometimes during the Civil War, and I thought this was very interesting. A lot of little historic markers that when I was growing up, I really didn't pay them too much attention, but when I left Fairhope, then I started to realize how much the history was there. They had a really deep history. People tended to coexist, blacks and whites, and you didn't really see many other people like Hispanics or Asians or people from other parts of the world. At that time, there were what we saw as Hispanics, we call them Mexicans at the time, and they only came in to do the farm work, like picking the Irish potatoes, the watermelons, the corn, the okra, whatever needed to have been harvested. And they lived in kind of whatever house they could find.
So you talk about Fairhope in Alabama, and you talk about the segregation there, and you mentioned moving,
right?
You know, to now Wisconsin,
Correct.
Oak Creek, to live with your uncle and his wife. What was that like, leaving the segregated South to Oak Creek, Wisconsin?
Right. That was a big culture shock, first of all.
Why was that? Why was it a culture shock?
Well, being accustomed to going to school with all black kids, no white kids, no in between, going to Wisconsin, or Oak Creek, Wisconsin, I discovered that there were a lot of different other nationalities, Germans, Polish, Danish, there were Hispanics, Italians, and it was an eye-opener for me because I think it changed my life, the way I saw the world. Being the only kid in the house, that was different. I kind of got what I wanted in terms of material things, but at the same time, I missed my family. It's kind of like a kid coming from one home and going into a foster home.
Okay, so you're in Oak Creek for a little while, and then you go back
right.
to Fairhope to go to high school, come back to Milwaukee, and you become part of the housing marches here in Milwaukee. You joined the NAACP and participated in that activism. What was that like?
Yeah, that was, some people would say it was scary. It really wasn't scary. At that time, my uncle had moved from Oak Creek to Milwaukee, and I was living with him again for a short while. He actually didn't know what I was doing for a while, until he saw me on television. I was probably carrying the flag. But anyway, we were harassed by the police a lot, by detectives, unmarked cars. They never really stopped me, but they would always follow me. And then when I would park my car, they would turn around and go the other way. I thought it was something that needed to have been done. You know, Father Grappe was a catalyst in this, and he had a lot of followers, had a lot of young followers, because there were a lot of teenagers and young adults who, you know, picked up the cause. And there were people who came here from all parts of the country, marching across the 16th Street Viaduct, and out in Wauwatosa, I think we marched on, I think it was Judge Seraphim's house, the Eagles Club, because of their stance on segregation. And being born in the South, you know, you could kind of feel this segregation, and it seemed like it was deeper in Milwaukee.
And it just manifested here in Milwaukee.
Correct.
Okay, so, and this is all these experiences are part of your autobiography, The Making of a Psychologist.
Correct.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Bracy. We encourage our audience to get a copy of that book.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before we close tonight, the results of our To Kill a Mockingbird contest.
Last week, we asked who played the role of Tom Robinson in the film version of To Kill a Mockingbird.
The answer is Brock Peters, who you may also remember from a few Star Trek films.
And here are the two winners who will each receive 2 tickets to the Milwaukee Rep's production of To Kill a Mockingbird, playing at the Rep through March 11th.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau.
Remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.
Good night, and thanks for watching.